Greetings, valiant viewers. How are we holding up? Trump's first week of September. His tiny brain must be spinning off its axis. Oh my God, I said my God. There's Bob Woodward's book, and there's the anonymous opinion in the New York Times, which we'll be looking at. This is tonight in Australia, it's winter in Australia. So let's have a look. Oh, before I go, in case I forget, I've had lots of requests to know what is the name of that deck and how to pronounce it. I was told that the J was a Y, Woodward'S, but the artist is from Georgia, the former Soviet Union, now lives in Paris. And a Georgian viewer wrote to me, I am so thoroughly thankful. And it's actually Woodward'S. Okay, marvellous deck. I don't recommend it for beginners. It's a great deck, but you can't go past the trusty Rider-Waite for the basics. So what to do first? I'll also be touching on Kavanagh. So let's go for Woodward's book, Fear Donald Trump in the White House. It's not even out yet, and yet we all know the dirt. Let me just give these cards a good mix-up, viewers. So here we are. He's a seasoned campaigner, been there since the Nixon era, broke Watergate, and here he is being dismissed in a tweet by the wanker-in-chief. Won't wash, Donald, sorry. He is an esteemed journalist. So he also weaves a narrative. I mean, some journalists are actually critical of Bob Woodward because what he does is get genuine sources and so forth, and then weaves an atmosphere of how those things were likely to have come about. Strictly speaking, that moves from journalism into something else, but that's also why he's great. And I'm sorry, you wouldn't have to be a particularly gifted or convoluted writer to make a stab at the atmosphere in the White House. And of course, one bears out the other, which is totally perfect. Everything Woodward says in the book is borne out by the insider expose in the New York Times. Loving it, viewers, loving it. And this is only day 6 of September. So, Woodward's book, impact generally, I think, and then impact on Trump. So, what will the impact be? All right. Yes. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Sorry about the private chuckling, viewers. Look, for those who support Trump, this is really hard going because they've grown up. Alina digression before I even start. I'm getting worse. Most of his supporters have grown up with a particular set of ideas of who are the goodies and baddies. That's part of their problem. There's a really simplistic divide between goodies and baddies. And Russia was the conventional baddie. And they've had to swallow that and go, well, it's actually all right for our lawmakers to go to Russia and go around. It's actually all right that our president goes and shags underage girls in hotels and gets filmed in Moscow. He talked about John McCain. I prefer presidents who aren't filmed, who don't have compromise. Anyway, so they've had to swallow the Russia stuff. They've also been brought up that even if they didn't follow much news in any way, they or their parents, depending how old they are, their parents would have known that Watergate was a very big deal and that Woodward was one of the guys who exposed Watergate. So they've had to swallow that as well. And so I think this mini reading is talking about, it's more talking about those who are vulnerable because they've supported Trump. It's more the GOP reaction and his base reaction than the world reaction. I'll tell you why. First of all, Ace of Cups, it's a major emotional reaction. Now, those on the left, everybody in New York who knows this man from the last 30 or 40 years, people who follow this channel and similar channels, don't have an emotional reaction to this book. It's stuff that you know and expect. It validates you, but it's not this huge emotional reaction. So that's my first key. Context is everything in tarot. So it's an emotional reaction. Shocked. They're shocked, viewers, that he is a rip-off artist. They're disappointed. They're wounded. They're disappointed that this has come out. And this is the bit you'll really like. Some of them, can't say all, wish I could, some of them are going to move away from him. I think hot on the heels of the McCain contrast, there couldn't be more contrast than John McCain and Trump. It made the traditional GOP, for want of a better term, uncomfortable, you know, because McCain so obviously represented different values, real American values, not make America great again with my Chinese-made hat. Give me some money so I can spend it on adult porn stars. What? You know, so it's beginning to get awkward for the GOP, you could say. So this reading is not a reading of independents. It's not a reading of the left. It's not a reading of people who follow the news. It's a reading for those who have been avoiding this issue. In other words, to sum it up, this book actually has a huge emotional impact on those people. Okay, good-o, like it's news. Anyway, I'm very pleased something's getting through to them. Couldn't be happier. Okay, now, what's the impact on Trump himself? So, it has been the week from hell for Trump, and it's the beginning of the month from hell. So, let's have a look at how Woodward's book is going to, well, has already impacted on Trump. Look, we've all run out of adjectives for meltdown. The aides in the White House have, you know, been working overtime, you know. So, how has Trump received this? We know he has not received it well, viewers. Okay. He could have actually gone mad. Okay. It has disturbed him greatly. On top of his reading is the Moon card. So, lies and deceit catching up with him. This is the card of lies and deceit, but also deep emotion. There is also the mad factor, dogs barking at the moon. I'm not alone as a reader or as an observer even saying Trump is losing it. This is pushing him to the precipice, and he's only going to have more pressure from here. This is extremely, extremely provocative for him, and he doesn't know what to do with it. Okay. Disappointment. Disappointment doesn't cut it. This is the traditional reading of this card, the Five of Cups, disappointment. It's not quite the right word. It's more desolation. I mean, what has come out in both the book and this article, that Trump is completely on his own, right? None of the aides want to work with him. His wife doesn't want to sleep with him. His children are sick of having to deal with his mania that they've dealt with all their lives, and they've got enough dramas of their own. Keith Schiller, his faithful old bodyguard's long gone. Steve Bannon actually has stopped shy of calling him an idiot, but nonetheless, Bannon's out. He doesn't have a living human. Stephen Miller, who is probably the one that's flown under the radar to push his own hideous, totally SS Gestapo policies, I don't think they were ever close. So Trump's got nobody. People in New York and everywhere else are hanging up the phone when he rings, right? People are changing their numbers. I'm serious. So disappointment doesn't cut it. You have here the Queen of Wands. Why, in the midst of this reading about how Trump feels about Woodward's book, do we have the Queen of Wands? Who is she and what does it mean? Well, although it's not a swords figure, which usually represents justice, I got a strong intuitive flash of Barbara Underwood, because I think the next thing in line that's most important and most disturbing to him, apart from what's in front of his face, which is this book this week, is Barbara Underwood and what that represents in terms of dismantling the Trump empire in New York. But I throw it back to you, viewers. Some of you are tarot literate, and some of you might just have an idea. The Queen of Wands, it's not Melania. She's not powerful enough. She's not together enough. It could be Ivana Trump, the original first wife and mother of the demon spawn. It's possible it's Ivana, because if anyone knows what went on, it's her. But my feeling, for some reason that I'm not quite sure of myself, is it could be Barbara Underwood. Okay, Trump's mini outcome card. The Harvest. Has he done enough to counter the bad publicity? That's the question for him this week. Have I done enough to counter this stuff? Now, he's twittering on into oblivion, as we know, about all this stuff. And until now, that's satisfied the base. But apart from the base being a worry in its own right, and you'll notice, viewers, or you may not have noticed, but I actually don't demonise the base. There are some truly hideous, violent, ghastly people in the base, but there are also a lot of people who just wanted jobs, who don't follow the complexities of big-time economics, who don't follow politics, who just wanted someone to rock the boat. So I've tried my best not to demonise the base. I must do a reading of the base. Okay, it's already 14 minutes. That's enough on the book. It's going to actually rock the Republican Party. All right. We're going to move now to the New York Times. The anonymous article by an inside staffer. And there's been a lot of conjecture who is the inside staffer. There's even been linguistics people working on it for key words. who is it. I don't know if I can actually determine who it is, but we can narrow it down. Okay, let's see what the cards just say generally. Oops. On that article. It's sort of doing something. Okay. It's someone who feels like a hostage in this situation. Okay. I'll just quickly go through the cards and then I'll tell you what I think it means. The Knight of Wands, we know from the New York Times saying he, we know it's a bloke. Bloke is Australian for man, male person, as the police say. I don't know where that leaves trans, but there we go. Anyway, this is the Knight of Wands. So this is the person desperately trying to do the right thing. It's a true Republican, whatever the fuck that means. This is my card that always turns up for the Republicans. This is someone who believes this. This is someone who believes that America is white with 2.5 children, and if you work really hard, you can get the rainbow. Okay, so it's that sort of Republican. Okay. And they want to put the word out to the world that this man is a maniac. Lest we forget, with the world card viewers, we haven't had it for a while in these readings. Two extra things. One is it's a closed circle. When it comes up in certain contexts, it's very open card, the world. But this has a slight treadmill aspect, and it can also mean the completion or end of a cycle. I think someone's got to the end of their tether, literally, about this issue. So it's a die-hard, hand-on-heart Republican. In other words, it's not a fly-by-night insider who just got the gig and would vote Democrat next time or not vote at all or doesn't really care, but they just followed this gig. It's not one of those. Okay. It may not be one of the big names we know, of course. There are, hundreds of people working there and certainly dozens in the West Wing. So it could be someone we've never heard of. But my take on it is that it's someone, I don't think it's Kelly. There has been word that it's Pence. Let me just leave those cards out and go. I don't think Pence would have the guts to actually do it. Let's have a clarifier. Is it anything to do with Pence? Rip-off. A younger person. Okay, see, I don't see Pence as a hostage. He has everything to gain by Trump being outed. So he's not a hostage. It's not Pence. Okay. With these two cards, someone exposing the rip-off and it's someone younger. There was talk that it may be Pence's speechwriter. And the reason for that is that Pence's speechwriter wrote for Pence last year when he was giving some speech somewhere at the mention of a lodestar. It's not a term Pence would use if it wasn't written for him. And this article uses the term lodestar. So without further clarification, can't swear to it, I'm going to put my vote in that camp. From these cards generally, of the word that's out there, it could well be Pence's speechwriter. Okay. It may be exposed, it may not. it almost doesn't matter. It's so fabulous. Because while they don't know, everyone in the White House is suspicious of everyone else. So what was already the world's most toxic workplace has become 100 times worse. It's gone nuclear. No one can trust a living soul. They are absolutely apeshit, all of them. All right, now Kavanagh. I'm just going to have a little look. Because the reason I didn't read on Kavanagh was because I'd done a lot of readings about other things, working through my requests. And I was kicking back watching some other readers, and I went down the rabbit hole of what other readers thought about the Kavanagh hearings. And I was impressed they were all on the same page. They're going, I don't know why, but I don't see him getting confirmed. Or if he gets confirmed, maybe it'll be undone in the new thing. So I didn't bother reading on Kavanagh as such. So I'm just going to do a little taster now to see if I get anything along that vein or anything definite, yes or no. Just having a little look. Okay, so will Kavanagh be confirmed? Oh, that's interesting. I'll show you that fell out, viewers. Okay, so, oh, sorry. The card that fell out, the Three of Swords, heartbreak. Hard to tell whether it's his heartbreak or the collective heartbreak of thinking, caring Americans if he gets confirmed. So we have to look at the rest. Embattled. He is embattled. It's not straightforward. He's sweet talking. King of Cups, he might get a retreat. Okay, what do I think? Okay. What's been talked about is that Kavanagh is a very smooth talker. That's the Page of Wands, right? He can sway people to his point of view as a talker. He's very good at that thing. But he has got the Three of Swords. I do think it is him now. He is embattled. The King of Cups. That can often be the father, but it's certainly to do with emotions. He understands that it's a highly emotional issue. We're talking here about, at the end of the day, it's not just Roe versus Wade, about a woman's right to a termination that's clinical and not being forced to go ahead with a pregnancy. We're talking about family and reproductive health generally for women. So on some level, he understands that that is the crunch card. But he's also got a bit of mud, you know, not up to his neck, maybe up to his calves in mud. So he has a bit to worry about. We'll see. He has to convince the women. Oh, okay, I just got an intuitive flash. Got it. King of Cups means he, the smooth talker, has to convince the women in the Democratic Party that he's not going to roll back everything. Also, those two women Republicans, one's from Maine, one's from Alaska, who are seen as reasonable people and haven't voted for everything. But I've been looking at them the last year. They haven't been marvellous either. This is really it. Are they for or against women's rights and women's health? So he has to convince them. So to a certain extent, it rests on his ability to convince women. The card of retreat, does that mean he pulls back? The Democrats best bet at this point, if they can fudge, if they can just hold it off somehow through some miracle, hold it off till November, that will be a success, because after that it will be much, 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 much harder. Maybe that represents delay. I hope so. It can represent delay. I'm hoping it represents that. I'd just like to share a little folkloric story with you viewers. With the very touchy subject of pro-choice and women having terminations, I worked years ago with family planning in Australia, which is the equivalent of your Planned Parenthood or whatever it is in the States. And I'll tell you something that's interesting. People think women who have abortions are those who just go out slutting and then they get caught and then they just mindlessly go and have a termination. Don't think about it again. They're just sluts. You know, there's all that judgmental stuff that is built into that. There are other cultural groups who have deep concerns on religious grounds or cultural grounds and are not comfortable with the idea of termination. So you've got both those groups. When I worked at family planning, the majority of women, over 70% of those who had terminations, were married women with children. They weren't single women, they weren't teenagers, because often teenagers will think, oh, no one's going to tell me to kill my baby, I'm going to have my baby, it's going to be great. No, that's how teenagers think, right? It's married women with kids who know what's involved. And I think if that was more widely known, we'd have a different discussion. And I'll also tell you something for nothing. If you go to one of those clinics, it's a great leveler. There are women from every walk of life there, but over 70% are married women with kids. I'll leave that thought with you. Okay, love you guys. Bye for now.